It all began on a particular night when a certain woman, accompanied by a certain child, came to the Duncton shelter seeking refuge. However, the owner refuses to take them in, making excuses that they already have more than enough lives to care for. That's when the woman bribes the bastard with a silver coin, which is more than enough for this greedy scumbag to make an exception. Once they're inside, he shows them the room they're supposed to stay in. Since it's already the dead of night, he decides to go over the shelter rules and responsibility fees tomorrow. After saying that much, the man leaves. The woman, her name is Helen, helps the kid sit on the bed, and for some reason, she feels sorrowful for this poor soul who has to go through so much at such a tender age. The meek kid wants to know where his mom and dad are, but it looks like something tragic has happened to both of them, and Helen is too horrified to spill the truth. So, she feeds him baseless optimism, claiming that he'll be able to meet his parents soon enough. But before that, he'd better catch some Z's and wait for the next day to arrive. The innocent kid acknowledges her words, and a while later, he's fast asleep. Meanwhile, the woman starts coughing violently and soon realizes she's about to die, with blood coming out with each cough. With a final farewell to the little boy, she dies right there on the spot. The kid wakes up a while later only to see the sheets covered in blood, with her already pushing up daisies. Later, the shelter's manager arrives with his mistress. Both of these scumbags are annoyed to see the old hag dying on them in their shelter. The mistress notices that the kid has the same bleach-colored hair as Pauline, a woman who's been living in the shelter for a while now. Speaking of the devil, Pauline shows up too. And yeah, she really does look a lot like the kid. The mistress immediately orders that the kid will be under Pauline's wing from now on. Since this ain't a charity show, Pauline and the kid have to beg for money together on the streets and bring it in. Now about this Duncton shelter. It's technically operated with charity money and government subsidies, a supposed sanctuary for people with nowhere to go. But in reality, it's a wicked place that exploits children under the pretense of responsibility fees, just to rake in profits. Pauline introduces herself and asks the boy's name. The kid doesn't respond. He's still stuck in his thoughts about the woman who just died. Pauline can read the worry plastered all over his face. So she sits beside him and gives him a little wake-up call. She doesn't know exactly what he's been through, but whatever it is, it's in the past. And he's got to keep his chin up if he wants to survive. If he stays upbeat and keeps his spirits high, happiness will find its way eventually. She extends her hand and tells him to put in the effort to make his life better. The kid grabs her hand right away, and just like that, a new chapter of his life begins. From that day onward, he pretends to be Pauline's son, and they beg together in the streets. While their mother-son relationship starts as purely professional, Pauline always takes care of him like he's her own child. She protects him from bullies and other vagrants. With all the care she gives him, the kid never feels lonely. Not even once. And just like that, 5 years pass by like a gentle breeze. Now, the boy is 8 years old. His name, by the way, is Rowan. As they sit together one evening, they appreciate each other for all the hard work they've put in over the years. That morning, Rowan ended up catching a rumor that she will be leaving soon, and he wanted to discuss it. Pauline doesn't look too thrilled while confirming it's true. Apparently, she's been offered a job as a maid at some noble's house. Rowan is genuinely happy for her. He believes she'll crush it as a maid. Pauline teases him for worrying too much, especially when he's got enough on his plate already. The kid, meanwhile, is truly grateful for everything she's done for him over the last 5 years. When Helen left him alone in this world, or when the shelter kids bullied him, or when vagrants picked fights, it was Pauline who was always there, always had his back. Tears start to fall before he even realizes it. Even though he should be happy for her, the thought of her leaving is tearing him apart inside. First, it was his parents, and then Helen. And now it's Pauline who is about to leave him alone. Everyone leaves eventually, and the idea of being left behind again just eats at him. Pauline quickly snaps him out of his grief. She reminds him that just because someone isn't physically next to him doesn't mean he is all alone. He's only truly alone when his heart is empty. If he holds on to those who've left and takes a good look inside, he'll see just how much they loved and cared for him. So whenever loneliness creeps in, she says, he just needs to close his eyes and feel his heart, because she'll always be right there by his side. Days fade, the sun goes away, and another night arrives. While standing in the thick of the woods, Rowan recalls Pauline's parting words. Feeling alone, he closes his eyes, puts his hand over his chest, and tries to open the eyes of his heart, just so he can feel those who matter to him. As soon as he does, mana begins to swirl around him. Even with his eyes closed, he can see through everything, as if the entire world is visible to him. Not only the world, but he can also feel his parents, Helen, and Pauline. Every person he cherishes feels closer to his heart. Years fly by since Pauline left the shelter. She hasn't contacted Rowan once all this time, which leads him to believe that she's still busy adjusting to her new life. All he can do right now is pray for her well-being. Meanwhile, he has been begging alone, just like the other kids. The director assigns him to Zone 1, the most profitable area. Since he makes high earnings, he is always treated nicely relative to the other kids. Then there's this guy, who is just too friendly to Rowan. His name is Blake, and he is the supervisor of Zone 1. He has been acting all buddy-buddy and nice to Rowan ever since he heard the kid's tragic past story. He is also the one who helped the kid realize that the light cluster he sees after closing his eyes is mana. Since this guy is so helpful and accommodating, Rowan has no reason to hate this guy either. This man has condensed light clusters inside his body, and he turned out to be a well-versed swordsman who uses mana. Since Rowan can see mana, he notices that Blake's mana has an oddly murky glow to it. Let's have a little context about how mana works in this world. Mana is the main ingredient that helped form this world. People consume mana through breathing, unconsciously influencing the world's flow. Among all the people, a few like Blake can harness the power of mana through various training methods called mana cultivation. Blake has explicitly instructed Rowan not to try mana cultivation without proper knowledge, as it could be deadly if handled poorly. As some passers-by toss coins into his bucket, Rowan sincerely expresses his gratitude, like any beggar should. Some passing ladies find Rowan rather cute and adorable, unable to resist his charm. Meanwhile, Rowan is lost in his own thoughts, trying to level up this mana game. First of all, he's trying to get used to seeing real objects and mana at the same time, and he successfully nails the task. This little achievement puts a faint victorious smile on his face. Not long ago, it was hard to see both at once, but now he has gotten the hang of it. Though this victory isn't without its hardships. Seeing both physical objects and mana overlapping still makes him dizzy and dull. Blake arrives out of the blue, fascinated by how much money Rowan has collected already. Rowan simply downplays his charm, expressing that it's all thanks to so many people with beautiful hearts. Blake advises him to stay vigilant of any danger around him. After all, his success might develop jealousy in some people. So, if Rowan notices anything out of the ordinary, Blake wants him to report it right away. With that piece of advice, Blake begins to walk away, not before waving goodbye one last time. It looks like Rowan has already seen something strange, though he doesn't really want to tell his senior. Apparently, strangers among the crowd, especially those with strong and bright mana, look like they've condensed mana in their abdomens, just like Blake. But the thing that differentiates them from normal mana users is that the mana of the two strangers he spotted yesterday had an exceptionally bright glow. What makes Rowan even more concerned is the fact that those guys were keeping an eye on him. But then they disappeared instantly, jumping over buildings. Besides, those guys didn't look very threatening, and Rowan really doesn't want anyone to know that he can see mana, as he wants this secret to remain his own. As a guy drops another penny into his scrap bin, Rowan notices that his bin is full already. So he proceeds to walk to the base camp to have it replaced with a new one. But as he walks, he notices some guys lurking in the shadows, and they have that same strong-colored mana within them. Something he's seen before, so he's pretty sure it's the same people from yesterday. Not just one, but multiple guys are continuously following him closely behind. Rowan has no clue what these shady guys are up to. He is particularly feeling scared this time, as it's the first time they are following him this closely. There's one guy behind him and one to the side. All he needs to do is make it to the base camp somehow. His anxiety starts to take over his impulses, as those shady guys continue to diminish the distance between him and them. At one point he thinks that he's screwed. But thankfully, at the last moment, Rowan hears the voice of a familiar figure. And that familiar figure is, of course, Blake, who is sprinting down with godly speed. Once he finally catches up to Rowan, Blake cradles him in his arms and jumps so high that he lands on the rooftop of a building. Those shady figures have also caught up to them. So Blake increases his speed, while cautioning Rowan to hang on tight and not let a single penny slip from the box, or they might end up sleeping with empty bellies. Meanwhile, Rowan's mind is already lost in his own world, much to Blake's confusion. Once they finally reach the shelter, the senior puts the kid back on the ground, who is still completely absent-minded. Blake thinks that the kid was perhaps so scared that he acted like a stiff dummy all that time. So now that they're here, he assures Rowan that they are out of danger and suggests he go inside. Once Bro gets inside, we find out he wasn't unresponsive all this time because his mind went blank from fear. It was because he was stunned by a breakthrough he just had. Back when they were escaping, he managed to see how mana flows through the body during movement. He even noticed how condensed mana ripples when strength is focused in the limbs. Hell, he was able to pinpoint exactly how many bursts and fades it takes to leap off a roof. So now, he decides to give it another shot to confirm the full extent of what he just unlocked. He draws in mana through his breathing, circulates it through his body, and starts condensing it, preparing to release it when needed. Looks like the little guy finally figured out how to use his mana properly. Next up, all that's left is to actually test it out. Meanwhile, the other kids who were stationed at their posts have started showing up, completely clueless about why everyone's suddenly being called back. That's when their senior shows up. He knows everyone's dying to know what's going on, but he tells them not to worry as it's nothing major, so they shouldn't stress about it. Once each zone leader finishes their inspection, everyone will go back to their assignments. He doesn't know how long the inspection will take, so until then, they're told to stay quiet and remain in their rooms. Except for one kid, of course, which is our boy. He's told to pack his things because he's being relocated. Later, the meek boy quietly follows his senior, walking just a few steps behind. At some point, Rowan is asked to stand aside while his senior chats with that big guy over there. Naturally, the kid is curious about what they're talking about, but it's too far for him to hear. So he starts circulating his mana and focuses on his ears. And bam, he can hear them loud and clear, even from way back. Apparently, they're discussing Rowan, who's now being moved into the main building, away from the dormitory wing. Even his senior doesn't know why. Since these are the director's orders, he assumes the director just has a soft spot for the kid. Well, can't blame the director. After all, the kid is pretty damn good looking. And considering what happened in Zone 1, prioritizing his safety makes sense. Those shady guys Rowan ran into earlier might be part of the Union, though we don't know what this Union is, but let's hope to soon find out. The little one realizes they must be talking about the creeps who were tailing him today. That big guy then calls the kid over and gestures for him to follow. Eventually, they traverse the main building and eventually meet a lady named Amy at the front counter. The big guy wants Rowan to greet her, since she'll be in charge of his well-being from now on. Once introductions are done, the big guy leaves, and the two are left in a brief awkward silence. Amy breaks it by asking his age. The little one promptly says he's 10 years old. He also admits that he can't read or write as he just never learned. Amy expected as much. He's from the dormitory wing after all. But starting tomorrow, she'll be teaching him everything he needs to know. So he can start calling her teacher. Or if it's not a formal situation, he's welcome to call her big sister. Now that she's taking a closer look, she realizes his face is pretty damn striking for someone from the dorms. The demure boy just asks why he needs to learn to read in the first place. Amy is a bit annoyed that he doesn't even know why he's here. She explains that a reading event is when someone reads a book out loud to a group gathered for a special occasion. Sometimes it's hosted by the author of a new book, or by nobles as part of a social gathering. Reading well is kind of a big deal among the upper class. And this time, Rowan is going to be performing in front of the shelter's patrons. If he does well, he might even get selected for a special reading. You see, kids who read impressively are often adopted. The ones picked for adoption usually read privately in front of their sponsor. But for someone like our boy, who can't read a single word yet, it's going to be a steep climb. After this massive lore dump, bro doesn't even flinch. He doesn't look confused or overwhelmed at all, which leaves Amy completely intrigued and puzzled. She just gives him an affectionate pat on the head before telling him to follow her. She brings him to his new room and introduces him to the other kids living there. Once she's out and about, Rowan proceeds to put his belongings into his personal closet, something he never had in dormitories. It's then that one of the kids approaches him, staring in disbelief, as if he can't quite believe Rowan came from the dormitory wing. As much as this kid is in disbelief, he seems just as fascinated too. He admits he's never met anyone from the dormitory wing before. So, as a gesture of goodwill, he introduces himself as Theo, that blondie girl is Noah, the guy in the middle is Hayden, and that reserved girl on their left is Lily. Theo then explains the perks of this place. In here, there won't be anyone bullying him, and he doesn't have to go out begging anymore. The kids who participate in reading events help out in the library, work in the reception hall, and attend to guests. The kids in this room particularly manage the library itself, organizing books and handling day-to-day operations. Since Rowan is a new addition to their room, they give him a warm welcome and express their gratitude for having him there. As night deepens, Rowan lies down in his bed. He can't stop thinking about books. To him, books contain all the knowledge in the world. Pauline had always believed that books were the best gift for a curious child like Rowan. Just thinking about her swells his heart with gratitude. In Zone 1, Rowan just finished reading a book as part of rehearsal. Amy then instructs him to bring out the books he read today. Once he places the fat stack of books on the table, the woman begins taking notes of the names of every book. Once she's done examining, she notices something striking. Turns out all these books are fairy tales Rowan has been reading so far. So, she wants him to move on to the novels in Zone 2. She doesn't forget to give the kid well-deserved praise for the god's work he's been doing. The kid is glad that he can read the books from Zone 2 now. After all, Zone 2 is where the books adults read are gathered. He's so excited that he wants to read a bit more before heading back to the dorm room. The woman gives him the permission he needed, so he walks straight to Zone 2. Lil Bro is having the time of his life looking at all the books, and no matter which one he picks up, he wants to read it right away. But then, one particular book catches his attention. It's titled The Birth of Grafton Kingdom and the Union. The mention of the Union sounds familiar to the kid, something he had heard from adults. Once he opens the book, the first thing he sees is the map of the continent he's been living on. One of the principalities, Grafton, won a long war, and the world was reorganized into a system of one kingdom and 6 autonomous principalities. Afterward, to prevent further wars and to maintain public welfare and security, the king established an organization known as the Union. This faction has been moving for more than 200 years to maintain peace and order. The members of the Union are supposed to be kind-hearted and good people, but if that's the case, Rowan can't quite understand why someone like Blake would start running away after seeing the members of the Union. The only conclusion is that perhaps the Union discourages begging, and Blake was afraid of getting punished. Then again, Blake gets along pretty well with the local supervisors, so it doesn't add up. There's another possibility. The shelter and the Union might not be on friendly terms with each other, and for some reason, the shelter is keeping the events of that day a secret, the day when he was chased by the Union folks. It must be something truly messed up for the shelter to hide something like this. Just the thought of it is making him feel uneasy. A few days pass like a gentle breeze. Rowan can be seen cleaning the library, using his mana to help lighten the workload. He's still not fluent at moving around while circulating mana, but it's gotten manageable. Back when he begged on the streets, he used to sit still and quietly breathe in mana. But things are different now. He's practiced enough that he can circulate mana while walking, or even while reading a book. Still, his mana concentration hasn't increased. It always scatters, never gathering properly. It's frustrating, but he believes taking things one step at a time will eventually lead him where he wants to be. On a particular day, all the children are gathered in the main hallway. Standing before them are the vice director and Amy. Without wasting time, the vice director begins calling names of the kids participating in the upcoming reading event. Luckily, Theo, Lily, and Noah make the cut. But when it comes to Rowan, the vice director hesitates. She's against letting him join this time, since he's only just finished reading fairy tales. Still, there's no denying the boy is handsome as hell. His presence alone would brighten the event. So instead of participating directly, he's instructed to observe and get a feel for the atmosphere. Rowan, being the well-mannered boy he is, expresses his sincere gratitude for being considered. With the selection complete, Amy steps in to guide the chosen kids. She instructs all 10 to change into proper clothes and gather in the reception hall. Meanwhile, the kids who weren't selected grumble among themselves. It feels unfair that someone like Rowan got chosen when he only just finished reading fairy tales. Later, Rowan appears in his new attire, looking adorable, refined, and undeniably charming. Theo compliments him, and Rowan returns the gesture with a compliment. Amy then guides him to his assigned seat for the event. Once everyone settles into their seats, a knock on the door signals the arrival of the guests. Soon enough, all the important figures begin making their way inside. One of the women just happens to be someone who had seen Rowan on the streets before, begging for money. Yeah, I remember her too. Back then, she was totally smitten seeing such a handsome little fella. Even Rowan seems to remember her, and he promptly expresses his gratitude for the kind gesture she showed by giving him some money that day. The lady's name is Caroline, and she seems to have become Rowan's unconditional fan. So much so that she can't help but talk about him to the vice director, telling her how she saw the kid begging at the Bree intersection last winter. He looked pretty back then, and now he looks even better than before. Just to add to the excitement, the vice director reveals that Rowan has also learned how to read. Hearing this, Caroline gets even more thrilled and insists on having Rowan read a passage from a book today. The vice director humbly reveals that Rowan is only here to observe today. That's a bummer for Caroline, who had been dying to hear him read. Given how enthusiastic this guest is about Rowan, the vice director decides to have him try reading the last chapter as a trial. A little later, the guests are absolutely flabbergasted upon hearing Rowan's rhythmic and pleasant voice. It's as if his voice is hypnotizing everyone, filling the air with thick love and affection that's making the ladies go bonkers with bubbling emotions inside them. The intensity of the emotions in Rowan's voice makes the guests breathe faint sighs, their eyes brimming with tears. The suspense and intensity cause the ladies to bite their lower lips, their heartbeats spiking. Once he's done reading, the ladies can't help but shower him with compliments, coming up with every sweet word they can think of. Rowan doesn't let the flattery go to his head and attributes all the credit to Miss Deputy, who helped him harness his potential and blessed him with this opportunity. Caroline expresses her desire to hear him read tomorrow as well. The vice director accepts her request. A while later, we find Rowan in the library, shuffling through the books on the shelves. This time, he's gathering books that can help him harness his mana and synergize it with his body's movements efficiently. As he picks up a fine book, Blake creeps up on him and notices that the book Rowan is holding is about the pleasures of life, particularly sex. Rowan turns around, pretending to be scared by Blake's sudden appearance. But in reality, he already knew who was coming from behind. It seems that Blake is here to give Rowan props for performing exceptionally well at the reading event today. He is feeling a bit disappointed that he missed hearing his junior read in person, so he came to the library hoping to listen to him here. Rowan doesn't blame his senior for skipping the reading event, understanding that Blake has a lot of responsibilities on his shoulders. To catch up, Rowan wonders if his senior has any new updates to share. Blake then reveals something about the guys from the Union who were chasing him before. They're starting to bother again, so Blake plans to deal with them with the administrators. Rowan is absolutely certain that with Blake helping the administrators, those Union guys are bound to eat dirt and learn the lesson they deserve. Hearing these encouraging words makes the senior even more confident. As much as he wants to join tomorrow's reading event, he fears he'll have to skip it too. While Blake seems like a brave person about to go up against those Union guys, this also makes him the real villain. After all, the Union only exists to maintain peace and tranquility. But since Blake is so kind to Rowan, he's a good person in our boy's eyes. Continuing the conversation, Rowan assures his senior that he'll hopefully get another chance to hear him read. After all, he'll be reading aloud often in the future. Rowan is more concerned about his well-being, wishing him the best of luck in dealing with those Union guys. Blake also wishes the little one good luck for the future ahead. He then points to the book Rowan is holding and insists he read it once he's free from the reading sessions. With that, the senior heads off to work, leaving Rowan to contemplate the situation between Blake and the Union. He's curious to see what it looks like when two people who've mastered mana control face off against each other. Most importantly, he wants to figure out where he stands in terms of strength, and if he can even compare to his senior's level. He begins condensing and flowing mana within his body, and unintentionally, he rips the book he was holding into two pieces due to the mana amplifying the strength in his hands. Knocking the door, the boy is told to come inside. Rowan doesn't know why the deputy lady called for him. She tries to put together her words. Turns out, Bro has become the favorite reader among all the noble women. They only want to hear his voice, and don't even care if he's reading solo. Those hollering women ended up giving the poor deputy a headache, so she tried to fill up their impossible demands. And well, now she's devastated to ask the boy if he's up for something like this. Rowan doesn't have any problems, so he's willing to try for the deputy's sake. In the next scene, the deputy officially announces the special reader for the day. But to everyone's shock, Theo's name is called instead of Rowan. This makes the boy stutter because he can't believe that he was chosen. The deputy congratulates him alongside the boy's peers. Even Theo reflects that it should have been Rowan. The blue-haired boy expresses that Rowan's reading ability is so elegant and good that he's bound to end up in someplace great. As for the special reader, Theo departs to his next destination. Seeing him fade away into the distance, even Rowan is a bit sad that the boy had to leave. However, the feeling of loss only lasted for a short while, because right afterwards, Rowan continued his reading and impressed the noble women with his poetic voice. He had no time to weep or reminisce about the loss as he was busy carrying out his role as the reader. Since the kid is tasked with a heavy schedule, the deputy reminded him that he'll have to attend both the morning and the afternoon session for the day, which means he'll be doing a double shift from now on. Even the deputy is sorry for putting so much pressure on him, but it's just that he's high in demand. Instead of treating it as a burden, Rowan takes it as an opportunity and finds it grateful that people enjoy his reading. At the same time, little bro confesses that he's always left stunted by the emotional toll after a reading session, so he wants a break period after each session to calm down his thoughts. Of course, not even the deputy can refuse the sincere boy's demands, but she reminds him not to venture beyond the backyard. Rowan is okay with that, and he's happy enough to be getting this much. Staring at the garden, the boy finds himself in solitude. Here he can practice mana circulation again. Concentrating his mana on specific positions like muscles, joints, and bones, Rowan is experimenting according to the book's guidance. Following that concentration, he can channel it throughout his body. The one thing that determines the success of the process is sheer willpower. Because mana requires more than just thought to move one's body, it also requires a desire and a call to action. Rowan's body is illuminated with the mana coursing throughout. By the end of the process, he finds himself in a normal state. The only problematic aspect is the mana concentration though, and he can't tell if it has something to do with his body or his skill. But for now, the boy doesn't want to rush the process, believing it's more important to efficiently discard any weaknesses so that he doesn't end up like other people. Back when Blake took the boy to the shelter, he couldn't even walk on his own. Rowan suspected that the people of the Union probably got tired of chasing down after him, which is both a relief and an observation. The observation is the fact that even the people who used mana could end up weakened and exhausted. Rowan wants to crack the code of the stored mana usage and amuses the possibility of using external mana as his own. After all, he's already tested the application of his theory by infusing his voice with mana and sending it as an output. This opens a door of possibility to alter the external mana so long as it has a specific shape or form. Rowan plays with the possibility and discovers an astonishing enlightenment as he causes a leaf to levitate. In the next scene, the special reader is once again selected, and it's Lily this time. Of course, like Theo, she's given an applause and told to be safe. But for some strange reason, Lily is flustered and speechless before Rowan, much to his confusion. The girl stutters to confess her love for the boy, but unfortunately she's cut off when the other kids blatantly start discussing their personal confusion. Knowing that Rowan is the best of them all, they can't believe that he got skipped not once but twice. At this point, they're certain that the deputy has a hand in this, believing that he's just a golden goose for the institution because he brings a lot of profit. Poor Lily's confession ends up getting annihilated, especially when Rowan requests her to say that again because he missed it. But yeah, Lily goes away weeping, losing her chance to confess her love. As for Rowan, the boy is busy in a state of reflection, recalling how the special readers supposedly all go to a good family. This means that if he was given the chance, he could experience a new world out there with a wider experience for his life. This way, he might learn about mana storage even quicker. The boy's curiosity continues to grow. The very next day, during one of his breaks, he's experimenting with the same levitation technique like last time. Rowan finds it easy to use because of the repeated process. Suddenly, he senses a purple string of mana nearby, and notices that a guy is trying to sneak inside the perimeters. This is the guy who actually brought him into the institution. The guy falls down with a heavy thud, and to the boy's surprise, he discovers that his mana is fading. Suddenly, another man quickly follows him and checks on his condition. They discuss what happened, and the word union slips out in their conversation. Rowan hears about it and is told to quietly go back inside without pretending this ever happened. The kid is still frozen in shock, not knowing what the hell is going on. What's more is that the afternoon reading session is actually cancelled on an abrupt notice, and the kids are strictly told to return to their dorms. Nothing like this has happened before, so the kids are confused. Amy concentrates her attention on Rowan and urges the boy to get ready, because this time, he's the special reader. Preparing for the event one last time, the boy looks sad. He recalls Amy's strong remark, which lacked the usual empathy she had on her face. Recalling what happened earlier with those two men, he wonders if they were responsible for playing a part in the cancellation of the afternoon reading session. Though the boy is uncertain, he steps up and finds Amy, dressed up and ready to go to the sponsor. But deep down, he knows that something else is going on at this shelter. Seeing the kid's well-prepped outfit, she is dazzled for a moment. But she doesn't tell him anything and instructs the kid to follow her. Rowan questions if he's being adopted by Caroline because that may have been a good ending. But to his shock, it's actually someone else. But Amy once again doesn't say a word. They make their way to the relief shelter called the Annex, which appears a darker and more gloomy place than the ones he is used to. Even Rowan can sense that the place is full of evil people inside, harboring suspicious mana. Anyway, the welcomer takes the boy inside, believing that it's important for them to hurry. While parting with the man, the boy gives one last look to Amy's face, which appears neutral. Inside, he quickly notices that the building lacks windows and it's much more gloomier than he thought it would be. The boy doesn't want to let his guard down in case something happens. Inside, he hears the voice of the vice director. They enter an odd-looking hall, which looks a lot like a ritual sacrificing altar than anything. Immediately, Rowan is told to sit in the chair and start reading. Collecting his thoughts, he wonders if these mysterious people are running away from the Union because of what happened earlier. And he's drawn a complete blank on the purpose of the ritual too. Rowan spots the book that he's supposed to be reading, but the boy appears shaken and worried. For now, he's curious about the strange pit descending below, wondering if there is something inside. An enlightenment strikes his head. It's actually a large pit of mana, unlike anything the boy had seen before. Rowan is told to begin his reading at once, and so the boy poetically begins reading a passage that describes a gloomy tale related to the dark pit. Even now, he can sense the dark mana accumulating inside of it. Rowan keeps on reading, reflecting how he's being struck with uncontrollable emotion. His reading takes a darker turn even in his own narration, and now, he realizes what's going on. It's actually the pit of mana that is his one and only listener. As the boy continues to read, he finds himself being zapped of his own mana. His body feels weaker with every word, and he thinks that it's dangerous. However, if he stops now, it will be too late. The shelter will be in trouble, and the forces of the Union will catch up to them. Concentrating even harder, the boy endures the hardship. His new plan of action is to absorb the surrounding mana and slightly adjust its flow for his own sake. And with that, tendrils of white mana separate and string away from his body, engulfing him in a form of a barrier. His total control over the mana flow resulted in a complete success. Now the boy is happy as he doesn't have to worry about reading. He plans to stall for a bit, and he can always tell whether or not the people of the Union have arrived based on mana detection. Rowan continues to read, but he's taking way too long, because the people who were plotting his demise suspected that the procedure would be finished by now. Realizing that they must check on what's going on, they decide to get the move on. But our boy is already prepared for them, sensing that they're heading this way and wondering if he was able to buy enough time. His focus breaks when he sees the people barging inside. One of the men is roaring his way inside, but to the boy's shock, they're actually heading underground instead of coming to him. This makes him wonder what the hell is being fed in the dark pit. The scene cuts to the housemaster getting bitch-slapped and the deputy lady grabbing him. The guy in charge of the ritual thinks they've deceived him in some way for having tried to run away. Meanwhile, Rowan casually makes his descent and focuses his attention on a terrifying tree of lost souls. Rowan's world breaks before his very own eyes as he notices that many people were sacrificed for the sake of the ritual. His despair takes an even darker turn when he recognizes Pauline as one of them. Anyway, the crazy guy from earlier catches the kid. Meanwhile, Blake comes rushing, questioning what the hell happened and why the directors were all killed. Blake learns that the directors tried running off, and it's then that they discovered a strange fruit. Rowan was brought here so that they could create one more fruit. But in the end, the process went unexpectedly south, so they don't know what's going on. Blake mouths his frustration and pulls the blade away from Pauline's corpse. The scene reminds the boy of his conversation with the man who he deemed as his brother. He asked Blake why he didn't have a sword on him, and all he was told was that his weapon was being used somewhere else. This is the dark truth. Blake is the bastard responsible for killing Pauline. The dark sight turns Rowan into an unrecognizable force of nature. The first thing he does is that he kills the man immediately. While Blake was busy retrieving his blade, he failed to notice what was going on behind. The next thing he knew was the boy enveloped in a powerful dark aura. He wasn't expecting Rowan to be this powerful at such a young age, but before Blake can even finish his yapping session, Rowan literally speed blitzes the shit out of him. His attention is concentrated towards the lives of the ones who are no longer here. Tears filled in his eyes. The boy weeps for his mother figure who is now no more. Imbuing mana inside the dead tree, he dives deep into the memories of the people. Rowan notices the tragic, horrifying memories of defenseless kids crying and the people dead. In front of him is a man, a matured version of Rowan that looks just like him but older. Before the boy is able to grasp more into the memories, the sequence breaks, much to his regret. And though he doesn't know what's going on, something inside of him has changed. It's as if he has reunited with the familiar mana that he once lost. The memory of Pauline hugging the young boy. Pauline tells him that he's only truly alone when his heart is empty. And if the boy continues to hold on to the memories of the people he cherished, then he will never be alone. That's why he must look deeply inside his heart and search for their love. It's not something that can be seen but felt. Pauline's voice echoes throughout the boy's mind, commanding him to listen to the sound of his heart. This familiar mana is instructing the boy not to lose sight of what's important to him. And though his memories and the love he shared with his mother figure are all gone, they are still inside of his heart, now and forever. And with the end of their heartfelt reunion comes a snapback to reality. Blake has his blade pinned against the boy's neck, revealing that he waited because of Rowan's sake, or else he would have settled things sooner. But he always knew that the boy was clever. His subordinates ended up ruining their plan, but now he's curious and wants to ask something. Blake requests the boy to come with him, or just die a quiet death with no one around him. Breaking his silence, the boy coldly questions where they will be headed. Blake expresses that they'll probably go to another farm, where he'll take care of the trees, such as the ones in front of him. Blake will be his manager and look after him. In other words, he will officially become a member of the group known as the Rettle. Now what is the Rettle, you ask? It's actually the group of their cult leader who has intentions to change the course of their world with dark magic. Blake is merely a servant to his leader, which begs a bone-chilling question from Rowan and his lifeless eyes. He wants to know if Blake is the one responsible for the creation of the tree. To that, the swordsman expresses that he doesn't quite have that kind of power, so it's not really the case. All he does is observe the creations of the high priests that can make such a thing. Anyway, Blake doesn't have time to chat and wants to know the boy's answer, questioning his decision. Rowan declares his stance maturely, rejecting the offer. In that case, Blake is dissatisfied and literally pulls his blade against the young boy. This bastard is the same guy who treated him as his little brother, so I was at least expecting some hesitation. But no, he really went for his head. Luckily, Rowan stopped the blade, much to the scumbag's shock. The boy casually stopped the weapon with 2 of his fingers thanks to his external mana control. Right now, Rowan wants to know if Blake is the one responsible for killing Pauline. The arrogant swordsman wonders if the little boy will seek revenge if he answered yes. In response, the boy shattered the blade with his electrifying mana, declaring that Blake won't live to see tomorrow. Now that's cold as hell, and also sad if you think about it. Blake is hit with a powerful blow, to the point he drops to his knees in pain. The little boy even warned him ahead of time to dodge, and yet he couldn't. Before Blake can even mouth his curses off, Rowan coldly ends his life by slicing him down. The boy coldly emphasizes that people like him shouldn't be spared with guilt or feel that they're being wronged. After all, this is just the direct consequence of their own actions. And from this point onwards, Rowan will make sure to exact justice against people like him. By the end of his declaration, Blake gets the Gojo treatment and becomes a Kit Kat. though Rowan's troubles aren't quite finished, as he detects more than just a few people descending to the lower levels. The group arrives and their leader demands them to search the entire place down. This is the Union Division's Vice Captain Oscar, who takes notice of the boy's talent and questions if he can use telekinetic powers. The boy is confused, so Oscar switches his question and asks if he somehow learned magic through the Rettel group. In response, Rowan denies any such thing and clarifies that he never formally learned magic. He's actually self-taught, which comes across as a ridiculous claim from a 10-year-old, but Oscar judges that the kid isn't lying. Anyway, the vice captain introduces himself properly and learns about the boy. Rowan impresses the vice captain with his sharp observation, stating his knowledge of the Faith Division, which is known for handling reconnaissance missions and specializing in swordsmanship. He even points out that Oscar is an S rank based on his badge. The vice captain is truly stupefied by the boy's cunning and cautious observation skills. He thinks it's a good time to chat outside and tells Rowan to retrieve the sword as well. Channeling the use of his power, Rowan displays his telekinetic abilities, shocking the likes of the vice captain, who can't believe that the 10-year-old is so sharp at a young age. One of his subordinates quickly informs Oscar about the tree's origin. They suspect that it was created less than 2 years back, and the spell binding it appears to be Udon. But even so, Oscar thinks that any high priest would have left traces of their mana if they undid the spell. Unless it was Father Scion, of course. As for Rowan, he's still lost in thought, staring at the poor little children. The ones that were called the special readers were being used as nothing more than sacrifices. Theo and Lily both left, and Rowan feels immense guilt for not treating them with more kindness. He then asks Oscar if he's seen many trees such as this one in their missions, which also means the Union Faith Division will probably investigate more farms to dismantle the Rettel group. Though Oscar answers the boy accordingly, he makes a striking observation about Rowan. Normally, you would expect a child at his age to be overwhelmed with sadness, but no. This kid is different. He appears determined. A clear resolve and a noticeable anger rests inside of him. Rowan requests to be taken in with the Faith Division, while Oscar gathers his thoughts, believing that the kid is clearly affected by the shock of his traumatic experience, but he's masking it like an expert. For now, he tells the boy that they'll be carrying out a special investigation before deciding his fate. He's told to follow suit, and as he's going, he spots a coin on the deceased deputy's body. The kid snatches it and leaves with Oscar. According to their observations, there hasn't been any noticeable damage to the Pillar of Faith. 13 casualties appear to be on the side of the evil organization, while 3 people were found dead from the Shetler's side. 2 main culprits are suspected for the crime, and one of them appears to be Amy. Also, the high priests and the main executives of the group apparently only set up the initial ritual area. They have yet to uncover the true cause of its collapse, which is why further investigations are being carried out to find out how and why. With the report concluded, the vice captain turns to Rowan, questioning where the boy finds comfort the most. Rowan responds that he likes the library, so catering to the boy's preferences, the considerate Oscar believes it is best to talk there. He tells the boy to lead the way, and in the very next scene, they're sitting inside the library, discussing the plans. Oscar expresses how even inside the library, he doesn't find any books on mana cultivation, so he's dying to know how the boy managed to learn magic on his own. Rowan's simple explanation is that he figured it out, which is actually a pretty noticeable sign of his genius. Talented people usually don't have a good way of simplifying their intuitive abilities, so this kind of reaction is common. Anyway, back to the story. Rowan calls himself smart, which I find really cute. Even the vice captain thinks the kid is telling the truth, and that he may be talented. Still, he wants to know the boy's side of the story of the events that unfolded. So the boy begins talking about the very first time he came to the shelter. Their conversation went on for quite some time, and eventually he concludes his suspicion that Pauline must have been responsible for transferring her powers to him. Even after hearing his side, there are many aspects of the story that has the vice captain confused. For example, this is a boy who never even trained in the cultivation of mana, and yet he was able to kill 2 men from the Rettel group, especially Blake, who was a talented swordsman. Then there's the fact that he also broke the ritual conditions of the high priest, which isn't any ordinary feat. For now, the boy appears to be using telekinesis without uttering a spell, so that's strange too. And then there's the fact that he doesn't even appear exhausted. Rowan is a treasure mine that no one bothered to look for. The boy is curious, so he wants to know more details about the tree they discovered. We get an explanation dump. Basically, it's a ritual device created by the organization that consumes human life. Their goal is to birth a fruit formed by the consumption of life energy. It's actually just a condensed version of mana physically manifested in a form. Hence, it's a precious fruit. Oscar even shows the boy the fruit that was created as a process of Rowan's mana consumption. The fruit is then taken and eaten, allowing one to grow their mana reserves. It's an expensive product on the black market. As for why they're using the method of reading, It's actually because rituals require conditions to be fulfilled. Reading is supposed to stabilize the tree and enhances the quality of the fruit. From this explanation, Rowan reflects how the tree was invested in his story, almost as if he was reading it to another person. That means it became stable in its activity, and before becoming trees, the boy understands that they were living and breathing people. Oscar is impressed by his critical skills, and concludes that they think of it the same way. The boy is still unfinished with his questions and wants to know about the word telekinesis. So the vice captain tells him that it's just a form of magic, allowing objects to move via mana instead of physical touch. Rowan demonstrates the same ability and realizes that he was actually manipulating magic all along. He doesn't have much information about his own power or the nature of magic. And even though the boy exhibits the first stage of telekinesis only, Oscar finds him to be one of a kind for his age. Recalling that the boy wants to come with the Faith Division, Oscar is curious about the boy's intentions. After all, just now he went through a traumatizing experience of being backstabbed by the ones he loved and trusted the most. So he's curious why Rowan wants to join their group even after what he went through. By the way, the Faith Division or the Union are the same things, but different names. Rowan openly confesses that though he doesn't trust the Faith Division fully, his intuitive ability concludes that Oscar is actually a good person according to his mana. Bro is a bit baffled to hear a 10-year-old calling him pure and innocent, and even claims that the kid's intuition might lead to his demise in other situations. Rowan argues that he can read people well, but regardless, it's not going to be easy letting a kid join the group or interfere with their plans. This makes the boy question if he's inexperienced or weak compared to their standard. But the vice captain cuts him off and tells the boy to listen to him and listen to him well. In life, there are more important things than just one's own talent. His strong tone just now killed the poor boy's mood. Rowan sulks in sadness, causing Oscar to clarify that there's nothing wrong with him. It's just that making exceptions for an outsider is hard, and that he's too young. So then, the young but clever boy questions if one's age matters more than their ability to perform. This striking question stops the vice captain dead in his tracks. It's true that Rowan exhibits the talent of a genius for his age, and it is made evident by his ability to subdue 2 grown men. But that's not everything. Unfortunately, Oscar admits that the Union accounts for one's experience through their age instead of talent. Rowan then questions if he's an immature boy for their group. Well, the vice captain decides to give the boy a shot and considers this a mock interview instead of a conversation. His first question is for why he killed Edgar when he didn't even pose him any harm at first. To that, Rowan cleverly responds that Edgar killed the headmaster as well his wife, and it only seemed apparent he was going to die next, so hesitation on his part would have been fatal. Oscar argues that the boy still killed 2 people, so it's possible that other factors must have influenced his decision-making process. Maybe it was his anger that got in his way. Rowan agrees that his emotions definitely played a significant part, and he is unafraid to admit that. At the same time, he believes that sometimes human emotions don't cloud judgment, but instead clarify one's decision-making process. As for the basis of his judgment, he'd concluded that many innocent lives were taken by the scumbags before him. That's why there was no point in sparing such people who had nothing left in their lives to redeem for. Ultimately, the young boy also didn't have any right to let them continue living. To this claim, Oscar questions if the boy had the right to kill them instead. Rowan answers that it was the only just treatment based on the previous factors. It's just that at that critical moment, he possessed the power to serve them justice. However, he doesn't want to escape the reality that he's responsible for taking a life. That's why he has no excuses. So the vice captain asks him if it was truly necessary to kill those men. To his shock, Rowan admits that at the end of the day, some people are tasked with the role of execution, and with his bone-chilling glare, he also concludes that the Union existed for that reason as well. In that brief moment, the vice captain saw something in him. It's true that the Union's goal is to act on their ultimate values, but even more so, their ideal is to create a world with happiness and laughter all around. A world that is safe from harm, stable and peaceful as it can ever be for the generations to come. Though this kind of ideal will never be realized fully, it's still the impossible standard that the organization tries to achieve. That is the true purpose of the Union. The vice captain internalizes that it was their one purpose, and he is impressed by Rowan's calm answers, but at the same time, surprised that the boy is capable of verbalizing such deep thoughts. Oscar decides to tell him about something called the Grave, which is supposedly an ultimate evil organization that threatens the existence of their kingdom. Rettel is just a faction from that organization. The first division of the Union is hard at work to annihilate their evil farms, and though the process will be tedious, he thinks that Rowan's contribution might be the tipping point they need. The boy is confused by Oscar's remark, so the vice captain concludes that he'll be going to the Union to prove his abilities, and once he does that, they'll consider him one of their own. For now, he wants Rowan to match his own expectations. And with that, the meeting ends. Outside, Oscar and his team are gathered. He announces the Duncton Shelter's evil operations to help Reddle's dark plans, but luckily the Union has once again shone through and perished the darkness in this area. The dungeon shelter will resume proper operation from now on. Apart from that, he signals the division to depart. Finally, he calls out to Sienna as one of his subordinates and instructs her with something. From first glance, the young boy notices how she's radiating a glow of blue mana in ripples. Oscar wants the boy to be escorted safely to the Union, so she'll be doing that. Sienna introduces herself as the runner of the Pillar of Faith, and shares that it's going to take at least 2 weeks to get to the Union. Because it's a long journey, she wants him to quickly gather important luggage. Fortunately, the boy doesn't have anything useful to leave with. Sienna reminds him that he won't get a second chance, and even entertains any questions from his side. Rowan forwardly asks about her and learns that she's a dark elf. Rowan is stunned by her bright aura and shares that he thought the dark elves had a darker aura. The girl is a bit baffled by his claims, but in any case, Rowan apologizes for overstepping. He's just intrigued by her mysterious personality. Sienna replies that it's probably because of the bloodline that he's behaving this way. But she doesn't elaborate on her comment and mounts the horse for them to leave. Oscar bids the boy farewell for now. The gentle and considerate boy even tells the rest of the group to take care, winning their hearts with his sincerity. And that's how their journey to the Union began. Fast forwarding to the next scene, we find Rowan and Sienna taking camp for the night. She gives the boy a tiny sheath for his blade. The boy had been curious for a while about what she was busy doing, and it turns out she was preparing him a little gift. Rowan is really happy and addresses her formally, which she doesn't like. At the same time, calling her big sister also doesn't seem natural. So instead, the boy decides to call her Sunbae, since they're going to be working together very soon. Seeing the boy's playful little demeanor, the dark elf turns away a little flustered. Anyway, he plays around with his telekinetic ability by swirling the broken blade in the air. Sienna takes notice of his talents while the boy recalls how the vice captain called his powers as telekinetic magic. She agrees with that definition, but it's more so that it serves as the closest definition to the boy's magic. Confused, Rowan questions what defines his power best. In response, she tells him that it's hard to say because his magic seems to be unique. His power is somewhat capable of directly controlling mana without the usage of any incantation or a spell. It's the kind of divine power that only the ancient elves had, who were the original race of the elves before they split up into multiple races like the dark elves. Based on the boy's eye colors alone, she can tell that Rowan's parents weren't the ordinary type. The word parents makes the boy reminisce about his own. The next day, Rowan and Sienna end up arriving at the Union, which is a place resembling a town. As they're navigating inside, she explains how it is divided into 2 types of zones, the residential and commercial. However, one thing is for certain, every race gathers here to stock resources. It is the most dependable and most powerful place on the entire continent, not just because of the structure itself, but because the world's strongest people gather here. It's the reason why the Union is considered the sword and book of the continent, as warriors and mages all gather together to protect the citizens from evil organizations like the Grave. Rowan is learning new things and filling up his head, while Sienna shows him his new home. Walking ahead, they're greeted by Lazarus, who is the director of the Union's management bureau. He's intrigued by the boy and requests to have a word in private. So they go on to speak in a really bright room, so much so that the boy points it out in his head. Now, based on Sienna's words, he's learned that the place is where military forces gather. The thing about the man in front of him is that Lazarus appears to have the brightest and most controlled aura. This makes Rowan question the level of strength this man has inside his body. The director politely requests for the boy's hand and clasps it in both of his own. Suddenly, the boy feels an intense feeling, realizing that Lazarus was trying to control mana in a more refined way. It's the end result of the same thing Rowan had been doing, but better. It made the young boy really happy to know that there were people out there who could play with mana to such masterful extent. Lazarus's eyes darted towards the little coin that the boy stole from the deputy director. Rowan clarifies that he never stole it, but rather retrieved it because it belonged to his grandmother. It was merely the act of retaking something that belonged to him. Anyway, the director wants to take a look at the emblem and requests the boy to hand it over. But even after trying his hardest, Rowan just can't seem to remove his hand or move his body. It's as if both of their bodies have interconnected and bonded together. Lazarus's immense control over mana was astonishing to such a degree. Rowan believed that if he could perhaps persevere the pressure of gravity and the mana at the same time, he could break free. And he does in fact break free using this technique, impressing the director quite a bit. He's always wanted to know if this kind of power existed, and seeing Rowan's ability in action, it astonished him even more. However, something about the situation bothers the little boy, who thinks he could have done better. All he did in the end was copy the director's mana control, but the director could point that out. Inspecting the emblem, the director's mana wavers for the first time, an observation that is instantly noticed by the young boy. He thanks the kid for showing him something so precious to him, but Rowan is curious and wants to ask a question. He desires to know if Lazarus is truly the strongest man in the Union. To that, the director laughs and denies such claims, pointing out that he's just a boomer helping out the young generation. He also calls himself a raccoon, but the boy is picky with his details and densely overlooks the metaphor. To faithfully answer his question, Lazarus explains that the 7 team captains are immensely powerful, and there's also the commander who is a master at work. There's also the governor, and the authority of the Union itself. So compared to those heavy hitters, he's nothing more than a raccoon by his own definition. With the boy's questions answered, Rowan requests to visit again for more inquiries about the organization. Lazarus is more than happy to reward the boy with his time so long as he books an appointment. From first impressions alone, the boy has taken a liking to the director, coloring him with the terms of good and strong. He thanks the director and finds satisfaction in his decision to come to the Union. Anyway, the boy is shown his new home, which is supposed to be the Union School or Union Academy. Normally, each time one of the team members leaves for a mission, they send their kids here. It's the perfect place for the boy to hone his talent, because in the future, he might end up becoming a powerful member within these 5 years. However, she does remind him that there's no specialization in this academy. It's a blend of all talents like swordsmanship and magic as well as martial arts. They're responsible for honing the students' talents with basic theory and core fundamentals mostly. The thoughts of going to a proper school fill the boy's heart with happiness, and even Sienna is happy for him. The next part of the story focuses on Union Academy. Our favorite little genius is looking majestic with the uniform and asks the woman if she's a teacher. Realizing that she forgot to introduce herself properly, Daphne tells him she's the head of the academic affairs, and she also teaches languages. Daphne hands him the first-year class schedule, as well as the subject list that he can select from. The subjects ranged from a variety of different aspects of mana, swordsmanship, and even stuff like astronomy. All of it looked so interesting to him that he checked all the boxes. When Daphne received the list, she was shocked. She told him that it was going to be really hard for the boy to manage if he attended all the classes. It would become a problem if he failed. But the boy's curiosity knew no bounds. He wanted to learn everything. Daphne emphasizes that there will be way too much homework for him to keep up with, and studying isn't really easy for most students. But this kind of thing was unfamiliar to the boy, who doesn't get why studying is hard. Hearing that question, Daphne realizes that she's dealing with a unique child, as most children usually didn't like studying. Anyway, she decides to keep the original list for him and recommends they head to the first class. So in the next scene, the boy follows Daphne all the way inside the classroom. His eyes darted around to observe his surroundings. It's no different than what he thought. The kids here have way more dense mana than he does. This means that it's his body that's the main issue, just like he initially theorized. Anyway, Daphne introduces everyone to a late admission. Rowan is given the spotlight to introduce himself, and recalling his experience during the reading sessions, he finds the feeling familiar. The boy politely introduces himself and hopes to get along with everyone well. His voice just now moved even the heart of the teacher. This kid is unstoppable. He doesn't even need anything other than his voice. Anyway, he quickly goes to take his seat. Daphne initiates the class and explains they'll be learning from page 24. First up is Rowan to read for them, since he learned it at the orphanage. The teacher is delighted for him to read, but when he opens the book, he remembers that it's actually the same one that Amy tested him back at the shelter. Rowan beautifully speaks with an elegant tone, impressing his classmates with his distinct voice. For a moment, he found himself a bit peeved to associate the book with the girl who betrayed him. Amy turned out to be part of the Rettel group after all. Still, he wants to give her another chance and hear an explanation from Amy's side, because he still doesn't know what she truly felt towards him. Even at such a young age, the boy reflects that people are much more complex to understand than textbooks. By the end of his passage reading, his entire class roared in his praise. Even the teacher is head over heels for the boy and applauds for the enrollment of a talented student. By the end of that class, Rowan finds himself his new fans, who share that Daphne isn't the type to get easily impressed by any student. But the boy's words were so lifelike and full of emotion. Contrasting his fans, there's also a girl donning short hair and green eyes. From the first glance alone, he identifies her to be the person from the vision he saw back then. Sophie Poble introduces herself as the president of the class as well as the student representative. They shake hands and Sophie inquires what elective class the boy chose. For that, he tells her about his interest in swordsmanship. But she points out that he's only got a little dagger on him, so maybe he's also striving to become a union member. Though that may be true, Rowan funnily recalls that he didn't care about this when choosing the subjects. He just wanted to study everything. But now he's curious and wants to know if swordsmanship is necessary to join the union. Finding such a strange question coming from him, she gives the boy a weird look, causing him to wonder if he said something strange. In the next scene, the students all arrive at the training grounds where the instructor is awaiting them. Suddenly, they all start bolting toward the guy, much to the boy's confusion. They tell Rowan they'll be going head first, but that's not the surprising part. The surprising part is their usage of mana, which gives him more than enough incentive to do the same. The boy happily speed blitzes all of his peers even with a late start, shocking even the student president. Sophie can tell that his speed is extremely unnatural as he surpassed each student with ease. Taking the lead, the boy happily challenges them to chase after him. Seeing the students make waves about the new kid has the instructor on edge. He can't believe that the boy can run so fast on such a tiny little body. It makes him curious enough to inspect the kid closely. The students are all tired by the end of the race because our boy dusted them. Anyway, they're quickly gathered in an assembly, while Rowan is still happy about his friends who can use mana like him. Sophie, on the other hand, is questioning if the kid is a human or not. The way he sped up and dusted them all, even going as far as to lap them around, is crazy to her. And even after running so much, the boy is doing fine without exhaustion. Seeing her glare at him down, Rowan asks if she enjoyed the race. Sophie is startled and internalizes that he's definitely a demon. Anyway, with the kids receiving enough rest, the instructor introduces himself as Diego Sanchez, the master of swordsmanship and their instructor. The boy is really happy to be in his care. So first off, the lesson begins with each student taking their wooden sword. And let's just say, they're not really happy after being exhausted already. But strangely, Rowan has yet to move. Diego tells the kid to get the move on, but Rowan appears hesitant and afraid of the blade because of his memories with Blake. Seeing the boy's unusual behavior, Diego immediately notices his fear and assures the boy that while a sword can be a dangerous tool, it's only a tool at the end of the day. In this case, the sword's intentions matter not, but rather it showcases the character of the person holding the weapon. That's why he wants the kid to face his fears. That eloquent description of a sword being nothing more than a tool really resonates with the boy. He reaches a realization that if Blake was using a staff instead of a sword, then he would simply go on to be afraid of staffs. This concludes that swords aren't the problem at all. So he walks up and grabs the blade, internalizing that he doesn't hope to become a swordmaster. At the same time, that doesn't mean he should run away. At first glance, Diego assesses that Rowan's way of holding the sword shows his talent, but the unfortunate part is his insignificant willpower. The instructor states that they're going to be dueling in pairs from now on, and though each method is fine, their ultimate goal is to subdue the other opponent. First off, Rowan is tasked to pair up with Sophie, believing that it's the right course of action. Their duel matchup is surprising to both. The kids theorize that Sophie will win this encounter simply because of her family lineage and talent in swordsmanship. Anyway, their teacher arms them the signal to get ready for the battle. The fight begins with Sophie taking a wide sword stance, eyeing her opponent down. Come to think of it, this is the boy's first experience of witnessing true swordsmanship. He describes her command over the weapon as commendable and thinks that it's much different from the horrifying feeling he once felt back then. Adjusting his blade, he wonders what good swordsmanship means. So the boy takes his stance and hopes to learn it with this opportunity. The boy's stance alone shocks both the instructor and Sophie, as he's aiming for the perfect neutral stance. It's a miracle to see the boy naturally master the stance so well on his first attempt. Still, Sophie refuses to lose in the battle of swordsmanship as her family's pride rests on it. Armed with that determination, she actually meets the first attack from her opponent. Rowan misses but surprises her a bit. It's as if the boy already knows where she plans to attack him. Knowing that Sophie is aiming for his chest, he dodges her swing. Not just once, but continuously until she's being blocked and pushed back. Sophie finds herself sulking in the midst of battle because she's sad that her cautious opponent has read her every move. It's as if the boy is witnessing the future before it even happens. In the end, she admits defeat and requests another battle. Rowan smiles at her and agrees to her demand. After the match, they talk extensively about how well he performed. She's really impressed by his natural ability for holding a sword. Turns out that they fought a total of 4 times, and each of them won and lost 2 times. Sophie's happy to fight him more often now. Apart from that, the students are glad that the next class involves magic learning, so they'll be able to rest a bit. But Rowan is confused because he thinks it is probably one of the most important classes to become a union member. But the boy's question alone causes his classmates to express their shock. One kid tells him that unfortunately, their teacher is just so out of their league that it's impossible for them to learn magic from him. Rowan agrees that it isn't just easy to learn magic, but he's curious about their teacher. At this point, the students are really starting to catch on to the boy's lack of knowledge. The man who is going to teach them basic magic is not only a former commander, but also the magic dean of the academy. That man is the esteemed Professor Arthur. Oh wow, I wasn't expecting Arthur from the beginning after the end to suddenly jump universes. The magic class is in session. Professor Arthur is the man who used to be an esteemed commander, and from the looks of it, Rowan is impressed to find his mana even denser than the director. This makes him curious about the strongest individual in the Union. Arthur learns about the newest admission and expresses that he teaches basic magic. Of course, he clarifies that just about all of the students here find his class annoying. But Rowan appears different, as the boy has intentions to become a mage and join the Union. This confession makes the elder really happy, commending the boy for his hardy spirit and at the same time reminding him that he's deviating from the path of swordsmanship. This makes Rowan wonder if that's the reason his classmates were looking at him funny before, so he inquires why it is the case. To that, Arthur lets the young Sophie answer his question. The girl confesses that in order to achieve total mastery in magic, one has to acquire a ton of knowledge which places a heavy burden on both the body and mind. This means, even if there was a talented being out there with a talent for magic, they still won't get recognized as a mage without a decade of training. Arthur confirms this, and explains that it's hard to become a member of the Union after graduation. From this information, the boy sulks at his understanding, realizing that a first-class mage isn't enough to be reliable. In order to become active, one has to reach the second class at least. Because of that, Rowan sets his goal of reaching third-class magic before his graduation. It's such a powerful goal that it even shocks the professor, because the boy probably doesn't even comprehend what third-class magic even means yet. Arthur helps him out, writing down on the board how swordsmanship is the focus of the Union, while magic is used as a pursuit of wisdom and knowledge. He writes down an incredibly complex formula on the board to produce a basic fire arrow. But there's something wrong with it. Just based off of his memory, the boy recollects that he's seen this formula before near the ritualistic pit. Arthur finds it understandable that the students don't get the issue with the formula. Though it looks complex, the fire arrow is deemed as an easy and basic spell. The advanced spells, on the other hand, are way harder to reproduce. Professor Arthur demonstrates the beautiful recreation of the fire arrow, but the boy catches the small detail that the arrow is a bit unstable, as if it's about to disappear any second. The elder emphasizes that magic formulas are extremely detail-oriented, so even after spending so much of his mana, a small mistake in the formula is enough to destroy the spell. But when he adds a final element to the formula, the blazing arrow is now even bigger and more powerful than before. The mere sight of it impresses the students. Arthur explains that mages are supposed to memorize formulas like these and make sure they're always correct. It requires a godly level of patience to adjust a spell, like turning the fire arrow into a ball, which consumes more mana and causes additional strain on the mind and the body. Apart from that, magic has its own limitations more than swordsmanship. Sophie shares that it's actually due to the fact that channeling mana into a weapon is easier and efficient compared to handling a spell. The instructor also adds that the consumption of mana is typically more straining, and hence its power relies on the mage's reserve system. Rowan now understands magic a lot better, understanding that every mage scales his strength according to their mana pool. And if that is the case, then the boy's low mana concentration will become a hindrance for his magic production. Still, he thinks that by thoroughly studying the workings of magic, he can perhaps solve his problems. But for now, it's uncertain. Arthur asks a fun question for the boy, wanting to know what is required to cast a specific spell. Rowan correctly answers that a formula is required, and while that may be true, formulas would be teasingly difficult for mages to recall in combat. That's why the system of formulas was redeveloped into the form of magic circles, which perfectly embody the principle of the formula. Rowan realizes that the tattoos he saw on the director's arm was actually a magic circle. He learns that some magicians like to engrave it on their bodies to get used to magic faster. It acts like a symbol, and if the formula is the equation, then the magic circle is its representation. Following this conclusion, the boy then inquires if the chanting is the actual conversion of the formula. Alarmed by the boy's observation, the teacher wonders what led to his conclusion. Rowan expresses that the formula his teacher wrote on the board acted as a blueprint to create a fireball, and if they truly consider the magic circle a symbol, then that means that chanting creates the linguistic conversion of the same spell. This remark makes the professor smile proudly. Though it was his first day in this class, Rowan displayed a thoughtful concept that many mages studied deeply to this day. Arthur is really impressed by the boy catching on quickly. He confirms that chanting is simply mouthing the right words, and infusing each word with mana creates its incantation of a spell. To demonstrate his point, the professor unleashes a fireball spell based on his incantation this time. He also points out that elements like one's speed and tonality affect the spell too, even their emotional state. It was no different than a recitation or a reading. And yet, no recitation in Rowan's life ever captivated him such as this. The professor thinks he might have intimidated the boy by describing the complex details of magic, so he wonders if Rowan is still interested in achieving his grandiose goal. To his surprise, Rowan is even more intrigued than before. The The professor really likes this and thinks it's about time they kickstart the class by learning ancient languages. Each student will be handed a book to decipher the nature of the language. And as you guys can guess, they're already feeling the dread of being handed such a cumbersome task. By the end of that torturous class, Sophie is fully drained because now the kids have so much homework to take care of. She regrets signing up for way too many classes. But at the same time, Rowan appears unshaken. Dude literally filled his entire week with a boatload of classes except for break periods. It's because his curiosity is on another level, to the point it annoys even Sophie. Anyway, Sophie learns that his dorm room is actually with Lucas, which is a name that doesn't ring a bell in his memory. She bids him farewell and leaves for the night. Back in his room, the boy is hard at work, trying to decipher the spell with the basis of his formula. Since he didn't have the reserves to use powerful magic normally, he wonders if he should adopt an approach of creating magic that suits his overall abilities. To the boy's shock, he winds up creating an actual spell. It's a ridiculous feat that comes with a major drawback. You see, though he ended up casting the spell, the toll on his body was ridiculous and ended up knocking him out completely. Returning to his room, Lucas is shocked to find an unconscious boy sleeping on the floor, wondering what the hell happened. In his unconscious slumber, the boy hears a familiar voice, the voice of Lady Sienna, who thinks that she must have tasked the boy with more than what he could handle for his age. The same goes for his other teachers who thought the boy would be extraordinary and ended up burdening him with far too much. At last, the boy's eyes open to find Lucas, who is really happy to see him doing okay. Lucas is a sweetheart who cares about Rowan and thought something really bad happened to him. He introduces himself as Lucas von Passau, who is his roommate. The dude is just happy to see him awake after he passed out. Rowan is surprised to learn about his own unconscious state, but it's nothing serious apparently. Anyway, Rowan doesn't get why Lucas was shitting bricks after him. Turns out that he has been exclusively tasked to take care of the child through his father. Here's the interesting plot reveal. Lucas's father is actually the Vice Captain Oscar, and he's really hoping that Rowan sings praises of him in front of his father. Based on the guy's mana alone, Rowan trusts him with his word. Also, it's easy to mistake Lucas as someone much older or an upperclassman because of his stature. But in reality, he's just Rowan's classmate and 2 years older than him. It's not that he was a late admission, but more so that he failed twice to meet the qualifications of attendance. Bro sounds like an expert flunker. To top it off, he's also not the studying type. But that is for later. He's really curious if the boy ended up passing out because of magic, evidenced by the chaotic room. It's true that Rowan indeed aimed to cast a fireball, but what happened afterwards is just a blur to him. Also, his roommate over here is actually pretty good at swordsmanship, and regrets that the boy isn't focused on honing his sword talent instead. Lucas is simply following the footsteps of his father. Also, Rowan here makes an intriguing observation. Though the guy was 2 years older than him, he also possessed a more powerful and denser mana compared to other students. His stature is pretty impressive too based on his physique, so in a way, Lucas admires him for the effort he put in. Rowan is a bit sad that he is falling behind. The kid wants to go to the school even after he just passed out. Lucas somehow manages to convince him to skip the class and catch some fresh air outside for today, and to eat something good. In the end, Rowan agrees to the idea, and also funnily admits that this is the exact reason this clown ended up failing twice in a row. Bro probably steps on a Lego and considers that a reason to flunk. Then again, that one is a critical injury. Fast forwarding to their flunking session, Lucas wants the kid to eat a shit ton of food to gather his energy. Strangely though, Rowan detects a bit of mana coming from nearby. He insists on checking the place out. The redhead thinks it's fine, so they go on to explore the magic shop. Inside, the first observation the boy makes is that most of the items here are imbued with mana. Meanwhile, the son of the vice captain is busy sneezing his ass off. Also, Rowan faces a sudden realization. Bro is literally broke as shit and doesn't have anything to spend. He sulks, being unable to keep at least a bit of money from the shelter. But not to worry, because Lucas offers him a chance to spoil the kid, promising to buy him anything he needs as an extension of his father's request. Now that's what I call a real homie. We all need a Lucas in our life. But Rowan is hilariously one hell of a cheapskate because Bro asks for everything inside the magic shop. Lucas shows him a bunch of coins which clearly aren't enough to buy a lot of things, but at least they'll get something. Anyway, the boy begins to explore the shop, searching for something relatively within his roommate's budget. An object steals his attention, mostly because of its sharp and murky mana. It's an egg with a strange magic circle on it, but luckily the price is pretty low. The shop owner comes around and expresses that he's holding the Stone of Gaiatia, which is mostly just a nice decoration to have at one's home. Everyone believes that the egg is unhatchable and therefore useless beyond a showpiece. Rowan wants to know what is inside, but that's something not even the shop owner knows for sure. According to the lore, the Stone of Gaiatia is supposed to act as a cage for an unknown creature inside. The shop owner only acquired the item because he thought it was useful, but in the end, nobody really cared about it since it never hatched. The Stone of Jiya is just one of many magical items, and so the boy is curious if something will really happen if the seal is undone. The shop owner tells him to remain humble with his expectations because it's a long shot requiring a unique spell. But Rowan is pretty intrigued. From the looks of it, he knows that the magic circle is expert level, and it's at least a dozen times more difficult to use than a fireball. Turning his attention to his friend, Rowan asks for Lucas's opinion. The musclehead thinks it's way better than a boring book, and thinks it can also be used to crack someone's skull open, which is funny. Anyway, Rowan settles on purchasing the stone and happily leaves the shop with his magical item. It's already evening, but Lucas wants their day to end on a banger. He suggests going to the coolest place in the entire Union. Lo and behold, the majestic clock tower that leaves our boy speechless for words. This clock tower is the main headquarters of the governor and the commander. Lucas only recalls seeing the former commander once in his life as a kid. Intrigued, Rowan asks for more information and learns that the guy was wearing a really awesome white suit. Any other detail beyond that is hard to put into terms. The best way to describe the commander would be like a white swan contrasting black crows as its subordinates. It is yet another detail that the boy didn't know about. Rowan knows about the rankings, but nothing beyond that. Even an expert is considered of the 7th rank among the captains, but that expert alone can take care of a city by themselves. Then there's the commander who is their leader, a man so freakishly powerful that he can rival an entire damn nation alone. Now that is the definition of aura. At last comes the governor, who ranks as the highest authority on the entire continent and holds a rank equal to a king. From this distance, Rowan reflects that he had a long path ahead of them to reach the heights of such great people, but he only longs for ambition, and that is to stand next to those figures one day. Rowan and Lucas stood at the arguably coolest place in the Union until the sun had set and the night sky arrived. The starry-eyed young man was enthralled at the sight of the watchtower. With its enormous height, it's practically visible anywhere inside the Union. Some parts of it are even visible from the school. Struck with curiosity, he asked Lucas what the red clock hands were indicating. He wanted to know how to read what it says. Lucas, the dumbass, scratched his head and squinted his eyes, pretending to think. He racked his brain to the maximum and remembered that the characters on the outer red band indicate the current year. Upon closer examination, I see that these symbols were actually used in ancient languages. Giving up on showing off, Lucas admitted that he never learned how to read analog clocks. Do not be like Lucas, chat. Rowan crunched the context clues in his head and read the year 262 displayed on the watchtower. That sounds about right. They're currently in Kingdom Year 262. Working off the first conjecture, Rowan read the other sides that most likely indicated the month and day. Today is June 14th, 262 at 7:20 in the evening. Rowan just needed a little bit of thinking to figure that out. Yet Lucas, a local, had never bothered to learn how to read clocks. The reason why the young prodigy was so fascinated with the tower was because he'd already seen it, albeit in a grim vision. In the illusion that the tree showed, the clock tower was a prominent centerpiece of destruction. If Rowan is not misremembering, the clock was pointing to June 14th, 272, exactly 10 years, a decade from today. After lingering for a little longer, the roommates eventually decided to go back to their dorm. Once he was sure that Rowan was safe, Lucas picked up his wooden sword and walked towards the door. You see, he might be a slacker when it comes to classes, but he's the type to never miss a single day of training, no matter what. If he skips even just a day, he feels his body becoming sluggish. And so, the young prodigy was left alone to ponder his chaotic thoughts. That apocalyptic vision that the tree showed him is hard to ignore. There is a very real possibility that it might not just be an illusion, but a precognitive dream, a glimpse of the future. If that's the case, the natural thing to do is to try and change the future. To gather his thoughts, Rowan closed his eyes and opened his mind palace. First, he needs to gather as much information as possible from the scenes he had stored in his memory bank. With his uncanny ability of perfect recall, he laid down snapshots of the clock tower from earlier. Bit by bit, he reconstructed every minute detail with pinpoint accuracy. Once he was satisfied with the amount of data points he had, he moved on to the next step. He filled the gaps between the blind spots in chronological order. Rowan identified things that appeared in the past and caused deaths in the possible future. The buildings, their roofs, their structures, everything was accounted for. He remembers seeing the corpse of Runner who died due to a collapsed roof. The boy wonder meticulously overlaps reality and vision, carefully stitching what happens scene by scene. Once he finished filtering everything down to the most important details, he pulled up the memory of that dreadful illusion. He recreated the scene shared with him by the mysterious tree and enhanced the areas he could improve. For a second, he hesitated to replay that sorrowful scene in his mind. Thinking about it now, the corpses littering the floor resembled the friends he had just recently made. Sophie, Lucas, and Senior Sienna were there, all of them lifeless and a little bit older. That's the kind of future that he does not want to live in. This has put into perspective just how weak he is and how big a failure he will be. For now, he wants to know what rank he has reached in the vision. Out of all the fragmented visions, only one contained the image of his future self. After browsing through the reels of data inside his mind, he finally found that lingering scene. From its default angle, his rank badge wasn't visible from his side profile at all. Refusing to give up, Rowan's AI brain came up with a method to change the angle of the image. This method required him to immerse himself deeper into the shared vision of the burning union. Upon confirming that the details were in order, Rowan turned his attention to his alleged future self. From inside the frame, he should be able to reconstruct what really happened in this vision. When he focused on future Rowan's chest to look at the rank badge, young Rowan felt his blood run cold. It was hard to see at first, but future Rowan looked bloodied and beaten. In place of what was supposed to be his chest was a massive empty hole, exposing his bits and meat. It seems like his friends are not the only ones who'll suffer a terrible fate. Rowan himself will die a gruesome death. After going through that traumatic process, young Rowan pulled his consciousness out of the nightmare. He slowly opened his mind and sat alone with his thoughts. He wondered if the vision was some kind of warning from the tree. The death of the Union spells the death of the kingdom and the continent, the end of the world and the utter extinction of humanity. As far as he knows, the tree is a product of black magic extracted from human mana. It's molded by sacrificial lambs who stood between the precipice of life and death. Aside from all the horrible scenes, a hooded figure was also present in the vision. Perhaps that mystery person holds the key to figuring out the whole story. Rowan maintained a healthy amount of skepticism about the illusion's validity, but to make sure that the depicted scene won't happen, he'll have to create a different reality, using what little information he has. The most effective way of doing so would be to start on himself. Since his future looked like Ace versus Akainu in Marineford, knowing what rank he reached is practically a lost cause. Since he was wearing the Union's signature black suit, perhaps not becoming a member would alter the course of history enough. Maybe he can take up an official role in the management bureau. They wear red suits after all. Or he can simply do the unprecedented thing and aim for the white suit that only the commander wears before the vision can come true in 10 years. The next day came, and the roommates got ready to get back to their academic pursuits after skipping school yesterday. Lucas reminded Rowan that Professor Daphne had asked him to stop by the faculty office before classes began. After passing down the message to his new roommate, Lucas went on his merry way toward the campus on his own. Rowan wonders why Professor Daphne would ask to meet with him in private. After putting on his uniform, he went straight to the faculty office. In there, Daphne politely asked about his condition after that little health scare the day before. Rowan heard from Lucas that this kind of professor processed his incident for medical leave, so it wouldn't be a hassle. Professor Daphne was simply concerned that the kid had taken too many elective classes and was already drowning from the workload. She asked him to reconsider some adjustments, but he was steadfast in attending every single class possible. In fact, he's excited to attend classes that he hasn't been to yet. Professor Daphne felt partially responsible for Rowan's collapse, but the ball of sunshine assured her that such an incident would never happen again. One last time, she reminded him to reach out if he ever needed help, and Rowan gave his most sincere thanks. After the meeting, the young man headed for his first period. Nowadays, he can practice mana cultivation as naturally as breathing, so training doesn't eat too much of his schedule. More importantly, he had gained a newfound purpose. He wants to guide his friend to grow alongside him. As soon as Rowan entered the room, his classmates turned to him with varying degrees of concern. They heard about what happened to him, and were all worried that something bad happened. Rowan appreciated the fact that they kept him in their thoughts, strengthening his resolve to expedite their growth. If he can successfully pull them up to the pinnacle of power, then maybe they'll survive. So Rowan asked for everyone's attention as he asked the whole class for a favor. First, he called on Isidore, Mursa, Lien, Kirsten, Edwin, Darian, Tirik, and Kalitos, the magic kids who are not interested in swordsmanship classes. Then he called on Flora, Sebastian, Epona, Demas, Sabrina, Wella, and Lucas, the muscle brains who had never attended a single magic lecture. Everyone was quite touched that the new shining star even remembered their names. Don't worry, you guys watching don't have to memorize the names of these NPCs. Curious, Sophie asked why Rowan brought the matter of classes so suddenly. Well, he was just hoping that everyone in this class would join him in taking both courses. He's actually quite worried that he might be asking too much from them. However, his unique charm had already captured the ladies. They would gladly go where he wants to go at this point. The dudes, however, were more skeptical about adding more to their plate when they'd already picked the courses they wanted. Rowan understands their reluctance, but all he's asking for is a little change in perspective. Instead of yapping about it, he reckoned it would be more effective to just show everyone why they should expand their horizons. He turned to his roommate, the last guy you'd see in a magic lecture, to give basic magic studies a shot just for the day. With his sincerity and magnetism, Rowan succeeded in roping his classmates in. They just find it hard to say to a face like his. The Dean of Magic Studies, Professor Arthur, entered the lecture hall and noticed that there were no vacant seats for today's session. He had heard musings about how Rowan encouraged everyone to take the magic class today. In all honesty, Arthur felt lively at the sight of a full lecture hall, thanks to the kid's effort. Rowan just wanted to show everyone that magic is not something so distant and foreign. Hearing the kid talk about magic like an optimist, Professor Arthur grew curious about Rowan's progress. When asked what he had planned to show the class, Rowan asked permission to step up on the platform for a moment. The professor chuckled and invited him to the front. Lucas sat beside Sophie. He didn't know whether he should cringe or rejoice at his roommate's fearlessness. While Rowan was about to take to the stage, a conversation was happening just outside the lecture hall. The busiest person in the union had come to a first-year class. So early in the morning, Professor Daphne suspected that the reason might be Rowan. The ball director Lazarus admitted that the kid is one reason. Aside from Rowan, overseeing the school is part of his bureau's duties as well. Apart from the two union officers, Miss Sienna Runner had also visited since it was her day off. She might be off the clock, but Vice Captain Oscar had given her a task to complete. Forget about a humble dark elf. It's more interesting that Mr. Diego crawled out of his swordsmanship training field to attend a magic class. He heard about his freshman swordsman enlisting for the magic class today, so he wanted to check out what the fuss was all about. Beside him was the principal himself. This guy just tagged along to accompany Director Lazarus. Professor Daphne looked at the odd collection of highly ranked and respected members of the union and reminded them to avoid doing anything that would disrupt the class. They must observe quietly. As soon as she pushed the door open, Daphne was greeted by the burning sensation of a blazing fire. A crimson flare danced in the air, feeding on the room's oxygen. In contrast to the fire's all-consuming blaze of destruction, the young man who created it looked like the poster boy for joy and wonder. Meanwhile, Professor Arthur had put up a barrier to shield the other students while Rowan wows him with a fireball. No matter how talented a student is, fireball is not a spell that someone in Rowan's age should be able to use. For safety reasons, conjuring such a burning spell is outside the standard curriculum for first years. Even Fire Arrow, which is a tier below Fireball, is not something students can expertly cast until they reach their 5th year. Even then, only those with real talent can manage to accomplish that feat. If that's the case, how did this small and scrawny kid figure out the crux of a spell that he shouldn't even touch for 5 more years? Everyone was so entranced by the flames that no one noticed the arrival of the guests. The principal fixated on the fireball. He had never seen such a spell emit this level of pure, refined energy. It's almost like watching Sion's holy magic. Diego might be a sword master, but even he can recognize the spell's abnormal density and immaculate stability. Director Lazarus would even say that such a thing defies common sense. It's true that a first year should not even be messing with casting such magic. But technically, Fireball is categorized under simple spells in the grand scheme of things. That doesn't make Rowan holding the ball in midair any less impressive. Oddly enough, the fire is holding a consistent size and temperature without faltering. Logic dictates that this is no ordinary fireball, but rather an entirely different kind of magic. Sienna had seen the boy's incredible natural sense of mana firsthand. How can a kid who grew up in a corrupt relief shelter be capable of such beautiful magic utilization? Sienna was entranced by the dancing fire in the middle of the lecture hall. Snapping out of her reverie, she reminded the other faculty members of Rowan's recent incident. She's worried that the kid might not be fully recovered yet, so they shouldn't overdo such a showcase. Maybe it's time someone stepped in and asked Rowan to stop, but the adults were reluctant to press stop on such a beautiful show. Inwardly, Rowan is constantly feeding the flame. Using his method, it's more important to focus on mana supply rather than sheer size. He is risking letting the fire become unstable due to uncontrolled mana. But since it's the boy wonder we're talking about, that ain't happening. That aside, he's currently more fascinated by the barrier spell that Dean Arthur put up to protect the other kids. Rowan could feel some similarities in shape between the barrier and the endless dark pit from that day. They may look similar in form, but they are entirely different in purpose. His thoughts wandered towards what would happen if his fireball happened to hit the barrier. Instead of letting his intrusive thoughts win, he praised Professor Arthur and asked for the name of the defensive spell. The old man forgot to respond in shock. Maintaining a spell for this long is the kind of task that requires unwavering focus. Yet this kid can hold a conversation so innocently while keeping perfect control. Before any more ridiculousness happens, Arthur bent and warped his barrier to surround and smother the flames. Instead of feeling wronged, the only thing Rowan felt was awe with regard to such a masterful display of skill. With the dean's final gesture, the fireball ceased to exist. Everyone gasped after holding their breaths for the whole exhibition. Looking at the young prodigy, Arthur could not decide whether to scold or praise the child for breaking every magic norm. Right then and there, Director Lazarus walked his bald-ass head into the stage while showering the young man with applause. To answer his question earlier, Lazarus shared that the barrier was Dean Arthur's signature spell, the Azure Flame Barrier. Upon hearing so, the kid turned to his professor and praised such a cool name. Arthur deflected, claiming that he didn't name his technique, but that only meant he was given a wonderful name for a wonderful creation. Since they're on the topic of names, the dean asked Rowan if that fiery display from earlier has a name. Confused, the kid insisted that he just showed a simple fireball, nothing more, nothing less. But everyone who's decently knowledgeable in magic would know that the thing from earlier was not just a fireball. And Rowan, more than anyone, should know that that's the case. The kid averted his gaze and admitted that he had been playing dumb a little bit. Still, he had not thought about giving his new technique a name yet. Arthur had intended to point out the danger of what they just displayed, but the boy is now distracted by the act of naming a new power. Director Lazarus injected himself into the conversation. As the head of the bureau, he can't overlook what just happened. He asked why Rowan did something so dangerous towards the tail end of the performance. The kid answered honestly and concisely. He was confident he could control the fire, and he was assured that Professor Arthur would have his back no matter what happened. He had no other goal except to share his spell. Rowan just wanted to give his friends some confidence in magic. Maybe some of his peers are interested in the subject but are too scared to try. The Dean of Magic Studies declared that completing a fireball before graduation would already be considered outstanding. What would you call a freshman who had leapfrogged that expectation? This is Rowan's way of showing his peers that there is no such thing as impossible. Well, he can only talk with so much optimism because he's unaware of what a monstrous genius he is. Still, as an educator, Arthur felt embarrassed. He started thinking about the possibility that he might have been limiting the younger generation's potential with his words. Now this small child has made him realize that his viewpoint might not apply to everyone. Then, the kid turned to the old dean and humbly asked for a little more time on the podium. There's still something he wanted to show his friends. This time, the boy wonder called his roommate Lucas up on the stage, much to the himbo's surprise. While wondering what he did to deserve to be a guinea pig for everyone to gawk at, he walked towards the stage. Once he arrived behind the podium, Rowan excitedly explained that he'd helped the sword freak cast his first spell. The way the young prodigy sees it, magic and swordsmanship are both ultimately about manipulating mana in different ways. Lucas trains his body and mana daily, so he should be able to cross the boundary of magic. Still, the third-time repeating freshman had never even studied a lick of magic theory before. How was he supposed to cast a spell? Rowan suggested starting with an incantation since Lucas severely lacks magic training. An incantation should be more intuitive than a magic circle or formula. So he slowly recited a fiery incantation in the tongue of the old language. Lucas tried to keep up, but he couldn't quite grasp the tricky pronunciation. Rowan tried to stay patient while teaching Lucas with enthusiasm. However, they cannot even get through a single sentence in the ancient language. He thought someone who had repeated his first year 3 times would at least have some semblance of familiarity with the old tongue. Still, he's not giving up. So, Rowan translated the incantation to impart the meaning of what they are trying to bring to the world. When he started reciting a poem-like passage with an odd rhythm, Lucas cringed at the thought of going old school with it. Rowan continued reciting the translated version of the incantation, while watching his classmates in their seats. The longer he went on, the more they looked dumbfounded. Suddenly the young prodigy was struck with the feeling of confusion and helplessness. He thought he could just waltz onto the stage and impart what he knew, but no one seemed to understand what he was trying to do. If they get stuck like this from the very beginning, then what about that gruesome fate in 10 years? If everyone doesn't get stronger, Rowan won't know what to do. He started with an incantation with the simplest complexity, something that he thought even Lucas could grasp. Yet not only the other kids, even Sophie, looked utterly lost, as if Rowan was speaking an alien language. The Wonder Boy froze in place, worrying Lucas by his side. Before things could get any worse, Dean Arthur stepped in to do some damage control, praising the kid for a good first day of the mini-lecture. That being said, he asked Rowan if he could learn the spell formula for the modified incantation too. That request pulled Rowan back from despair. He telekinetically picked up a stick of chalk and started writing an exhaustive formula on the board. Everyone was equally amazed and amused at such an impressive showing of telekinesis. It did not take Rowan too long to write down the blueprint of his spell. Dean Arthur called upon his reliable barrier once more, this time protecting those on the stage instead of the ones sitting around. Director Lazarus and the dean steadily pored over the fascinating writing on the board. When asked where he saw the spell formula, Rowan asserted that he never copied anything. He saw what Professor Arthur wrote the other day and modified it in his own way. Those with well-trained eyes could see that this is no mere modification. The kid simply adjusted a few things here and there to make a spell that would work better for him. He's not aware of the gravity of his claim. but he's basically saying that he created a new spell formula. The director and the dean exchanged a meaningful glance. They need to have a long conversation about what to do next, so they might as well call a proper meeting elsewhere. Before leaving, Director Lazarus thanked the kid for showing such an innovative spell